Ooh, okay. I almost was on mute, you guys. It's gonna be another one of those lives. But hello folks. Hello. We're just gonna give it some time for people to make their way in. So as you all know, love to hear who's all tuning in. Go ahead and chime in the chat. Right. Let's see here. Just getting everything set up. Hello, welcome. Go ahead and tell me who's all here. Go ahead and chime in the chat. Tell me where you're listening in from. You know, we always love to do a shout out to the folks who tune in with us. It's a new year. A lot of different things happening and going on this week, and so really excited about that. Hey, Lauren. Hey, David. It's always great to have you both here. Super excited. Let's see here. Just give me some time for the room to fill up. But again, thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. And so let's see here. You know, I got to get all my screens going. No, right? Like, shout out to that playlist. Okay, like somebody, I don't know who added this on here, but I was like, how is that fitting? I every time I turn on the music for these streams, I always hit shuffle just to see what is the first song that came up, and I was like, yeah, this is great. Oh my gosh, hi Cynthia, thank you, thank you. Okay, come on, NoCal, come on, North Carolina, North Carolina. Oh Lord, California. You already told what it kind of is. It's already been a long year, right? So like, but happy New Year to everyone tuning in. I really appreciate you all for being here. Um, you know, for folks who are new to the space or who might be looking at this later on, my name is Michelle, Senior Program Manager here at Women Engage. As everyone knows, we are nonpartisan, which means that we do not advocate for or against any political party, but we are really just here to talk about issues, continue to make the voting process much more accessible for our communities and stuff like that. And so now I appreciate it. David. Thank you so much for your understanding. That's like, oh, yeah, I don't know where I was going with Carolina. Yeah, because I've been out here for a minute. But I actually have some family there in SoCal though. They're down where is it? They're in San Diego. There we go. So, oh my goodness, you guys. But yes, it has just been such a time. And so I really just have to start out with thanking everyone, thanking all of our supporters, thanking you all for tuning in with us week after week. You know, we definitely started this back in October and was not expecting the outpour of love and support that we've been getting continue to sustain throughout the midst of everything that's going on. And so I hope that this series has been really great because you guys definitely uplift my week every single week. And so I really appreciate you all for being here. And as you can see in the comments, there is the collaborative playlist. So if you want to make sure to put your favorite jams on here, you can also put this here as well. I mean, um, as folks may remember who were here with us before, Gayla, who's with Georgia Conservation Voters, said it best is that where would the movement be without music? Like where would the movement be without music? So yes, and so as we all know, had another election where it was literally all eyes on Georgia, nationally, internationally, as we went into the runoff election. And so here our team, I just have to shout them out as well, have really been putting in a lot of work over the past year. I think something that a lot of folks don't realize is that as we were going into 2020, we actually started our plans around getting out the vote, um, getting out the count, especially around the census last year in mid February, right? So that's when our teams were fully trained, started calling, sending text messages, and things of that nature. And then, of course, due to the circumstances of last year, we actually kept going because originally then our primaries were set for March. And of course, after some consideration were pushed back twice to June. And then from there, you know, navigating so much. And hello, Lori, thank you. Thank you. We really appreciate it. And so, and then from there, we were navigating trying to do voter registration. I would say one thing here at Women Engaged was that definitely in the best interest of our communities and our team members is to make sure that we were maintaining the health and safety of folks. So we've been doing a lot of this work remotely and digitally and really becoming very innovative in the ways that we reach folks. So it was definitely a host of those things, being able to push through voter registration and then going into, of course, getting out the vote for the general election and then subsequently the runoff elections, because there were two of them. And so Georgians are tired, okay? They are tired of getting these messages, but I do want to note that today is the last day to cure your ballot. And so for folks who are tuning in from out of state, just so you all know what that means, is that like here in Georgia, if you fill out a provisional ballot or your absentee ballot is rejected, you have 3 days after the election to correct any issues in order to make sure that your ballot is counted. And it's just a part of us continuing to do this work. It's something that happens every election cycle. But we want to make sure that we're doing our part to let people know. So our teams have actually been working really hard over these past couple days, even after the runoff election, to continue to get that information out there. If you know anyone who's in Georgia who filled out a paper ballot or hasn't checked the status of their absentee ballot, we're really imploring them to do so using the Secretary of State's My Voter page and then to contact their local county elections office as soon as possible. We want these things have to be corrected by 5 p.m. today. And we want to make sure that every ballot counts because just like we say in every election, every vote does count. And so making sure that we're getting that information out there to folks and that people get it in time. So there's a few hours left in the day. And so really excited to keep on and keep doing this work. And so, yeah, this is kind of like just to talk a little bit about where we are and I guess some of the wins that we saw too as well. I think one of the greatest wins I thought from the runoff election was that we actually were able to turn out 80% of the people who also turned out in the general election, which is huge. Okay. Huge. So, um, I will note that typically during runoff elections, we do not see such significant high voter turnout. Especially because also like sometimes attention is not always given to these runoff elections. I will say usually on average for a runoff election, what we find is that we really get about a turnout of maybe like 10, at most 20%. And so this was really substantial for us to be able to get up to 80%, right? Very excited about that. We'll also be able to look at some of the data that's through Tufts University that showcases that 1 in 5 young Georgians had voted in this runoff election who were not previously registered to vote in the general election. That means that the youth vote rose by 20% in this election, right? So like it's like I should have put some audio applause here because I'm just super excited again about how folks millennials like myself and Gen Zers have continued to organize and show up in ways that I think really counters a narrative that has always been very pervasive around young people. Because the thing is that when we talk about the youth vote, and a lot of times folks saying that young people are not turning out, it's because we're not also giving them intentionality as far as outreach. And so I'm really thankful that folks continue to do that outreach and really talking to young people about the issues that face them when it comes to accessing the ballot box. And that we were able to really work through that. And we got to see a huge growth in that. And knowing that it doesn't stop here, in the sense that, like, with these elections, of course, them being different, is that we need to know that this is a time that we need to continue to do the things that we do, continue to invest in young people and especially in people of color and Black women and femmes in our voter outreach and the ways in which we talk to folks. I really just want to highlight that and uplift that and thank you all for doing that as well. And so the other part about this as well, as far as the voter turnout, we're still waiting for information as far as the official demographic breakdowns that came from voting in this election. But what we do know is that like a little over 3 million, I want to say about 3.1 million people took advantage of early voting and absentee voting ahead of election day, which is huge. Okay, given the fact that like for you all just to know is that our early voting season started, what was that, December 14th? And then a number of counties were ending their early voting period at different dates and times because it actually overlapped with New Year's. So the fact that we were able to get like 3.1 million Georgians, I almost said Jordans, y'all, don't mind me. This has kind of been that kind of week. Um, that we've been able to get that many Georgians out to go vote and take advantage of absentee voting is something that's definitely worth celebrating. So again, kudos to all of our Georgians, especially because after the general election, those texts and calls definitely ramped up. I know myself, we're even in this work. I too was also getting those calls and texts, and really pushing it out there. But the data doesn't lie, is that when we give people that personal touch of really having conversations with them about the issues that motivate them to vote, um, and also just talking to them about the process of how to get out and vote and making sure they have the correct information, they show out and they turn out. And so I'm really excited that we can celebrate that as well. And so on election day, that left us with about, I want to say, 1.3 million people who turned out to vote that day as well. And so that was also very exciting too. I know for us here at Women Engaged, something that we started back in March when things first started going to lockdown is something that we brought back as we got into the holiday season, was a question around COVID-19 and its impact on people. I think the thing is that, we here at Women Engaged definitely recognize the humanity of our community members, understanding how sometimes it can be very difficult to look at voting in a certain way when you're definitely facing different crises and things of that nature. And so while Women Engage is not a direct service organization, we actually train our team members to be able to research and look up information about resources in the areas that people were residing in to connect them with something. So then in order for them to find relief from their different circumstances. And so I am excited to announce that we were able to contact over 800 people in follow-ups to really connect them with those things, whether it was a ride to the polls or whether it was information about utilities, food, or housing. Being able to use resources like the 211 United Way website was something that I'm super excited to celebrate in the midst of course, leading up to these elections. Because I think the thing is, and this is something that I've stated a few times in other places, was that oftentimes voting is viewed as something that's very transactional. It's viewed as something that's very, it can be very dehumanizing. I think that's where I always say is that it can be very dehumanizing, where we're not really, talking to folks in the ways that really mean so, like really looking at people and their humanity. So we were able to do those calls again in March, and then we did them again now this time around as well, especially because we know that we're coming up on about 1 year since everything that has happened. So I am really excited to announce that. Um, and so don't mind if I'm looking over. I actually had to write down all these data points because unfortunately I don't remember all of the things that I say. Um, and so I will say is that like I'm just so filled with joy because even in the midst of course, we all know what is going on this week, is that we can still take time to celebrate those wins. Um, and being able to show out for people. I definitely want to do a quick shout out as well to our volunteers. Okay, we got a couple here in the midst of this comment section, no, in the comments here tuning in. And for those of you all who else are tuning in and haven't checked in, I just want to thank you all. We had such an amazing outpour of love and support in the general and also the runoff election. We had almost over 100 volunteer shifts worked in terms of doing phone calls, text messages. We even had an excellent creative volunteer team that put in a lot of quick work and intentional work around our series around the voter stories, which you can also check out at womenengaged.vote because they are still there. Really powerful testimonies from our team members and community members about the reasons that motivate them not only to vote, but also to continue to organize and be involved. And so I do want to really shout you all out because that work enables us to continue you know, expand and deepen our reach, because it's really about building community and having those conversations. And so sometimes, because like I mentioned, Georgians are tired. Like, so sometimes people may not have been the most friendliest, but I'm always so appreciative to our volunteers and team members for always coming in with still a very positive attitude, knowing that in the end that this is still stuff that we can move to work towards. And so I'm really excited about that. And so I think, over the course of this runoff in particular, we were able to send over 400,000 text messages out to people. And we were able to talk to um, over 25,000 people. And these are things that are definitely like worth celebrating, worth really, looking at, because again, it's just super exciting. And so I know, right, Cynthia? I love the voter stories too. I was like, oh my gosh, it's just, hmm, I swear, like they really touch my heart. I think again, because the thing is that, and we covered this, I want to say a few series ago. That's what I say, it feels so long, like everything starts to blur together. But it was when we had Malika Redman, our amazing executive director and co-founder, on with us when we were talking, or maybe that was on Instagram. That was on Instagram. Okay, like that was on Instagram. But we were talking about how, voting isn't necessarily always an individualized process. It's something that does happen in community. And knowing that there are very personal things that motivate us to be involved, to be committed to the things that we're doing. And so I love those stories. I really do. And also too, for folks who are tuning in, if you have any particular questions about the runoff or this moment and stuff like that, you can also feel free to drop them in the chat. I definitely understand. But I just wanted to uplift that as well. And so I also want to mention too that while we were talking to people, especially on the phones, we were asking them about some of the issues that motivate them to vote, right? Like, what are some of the top things of concern for them? And so, for a preliminary analysis of it, shows that the top three, the number one, of course, being COVID, the second one being healthcare, and the third one being the economy. And so we're definitely excited to really dig down deeper into understanding more about the data that we collected on that. But it's really important to uplift those aspects, because for we covered this, I think in early December, was around healthcare access here in Georgia. And so just to recap, Georgia has not expanded Medicaid, which means that there's still a number of hospitals that have closed. There's still an issue as far as access to affordable quality healthcare that is comprehensive in its services, and it directly and disproportionately impacts people of color, in particular Black Georgians, especially those in rural areas. And so, really wanted to make sure that as we continue to progress in this new year, even though the major elections behind us, there's still so much more that needs to be done in a way to make sure that we can actualize the the vision for our lives, which is the ability to not only survive but thrive in safe and sustainable communities. And so with that, I'm going to start pivoting a little bit to what we are seeing on the landscape here in Georgia. And so for folks who are unfamiliar with Georgia, our Georgia Legislature, which are state senators and state representatives, are scheduled to start meeting actually next Monday, January 11th. And there they will have a host of things that they can start talking about around bills and other initiatives that would directly impact the things that we work on and directly impact the issues that matter most to our communities. I'm going to go ahead and start with the biggest one, which is around voting rights. So, as you all may remember, last year in the midst of everything that has been going on, we also had a historic census. And those results of the census are making their way to everyone's state legislatures, where everyone's state will actually now be tasked with the duty of what we call redistricting, where they can go in and redraw different county lines, different precinct lines, and oftentimes this leads to what a phenomenon that's referred to as gerrymandering, where those lines are typically drawn in favor for one political party over another. What we see is that what would be best beneficial is that we continue to advocate for an independent commission that's comprised of community members to ensure that we get fair and just maps drawn. This is something that is a very institutionalized way that impacts our voter rights because it occurs every 10 years. that means that the decisions that are made in terms of redistricting in our states this year will continue to impact us until 2031. Wow. Oh, interesting. Sorry, you guys. I was like 2031. Sounds interesting saying that. And so making sure that we're continuing to keep that up as well. Also, too, as we continue to celebrate the historic voter turnouts that we have experienced all year long across this nation, especially here in Georgia, knowing that there's already been conversations within the Secretary of State's office here, as well as other legislatures, about the possibility of moving to a no excuse absentee ballot process. So here in Georgia, you do not currently need an excuse to request an absentee ballot. All you would need to do is fill out an application with like your residency information, things that match your voter registration. They will take it and process it. And once it's accepted, will usually send you an absentee ballot. If they move to a no excuse absentee ballot system, that means that you would either need to be over the age of 65, in the military, or disabled, usually, in order to do that. Sometimes the particulars are different based off of the bills, but that is some of the general consensus around no excuse absentee ballot process that we see in other states. This could actually further restrict access to it because where we saw, I want to say on average in Georgia, voters typically use absentee ballot process anywhere from 3 to 5%. It actually rose last year to about 20%, where I think, especially in this last election, if I remember correctly, 1.3 million Georgians overall use absentee ballot process. So it's really important that we continue to push and advocate for this. We saw that in the numbers when we were talking to people about their voting plans and assisting them, that a number, like almost 70% of people that we talked to were taking advantage of early voting and absentee ballot process. So it's really important that we continue to advocate for these things in the aftermath of this election, especially as we see this increased gains. The idea is that we want to make sure that we're continuing to build on voter turnout and not taking a step back in it. Um, let's see here. The next thing is eliminating drop boxes. So another thing that was new for us, especially in the absentee ballot process, that is that 2020 was the first year that Georgia had debuted drop boxes. So prior to 2020, if you had an absentee ballot, you either had to mail it in through the U.S. Postal Services or any other mail carrier, or you would need to take it directly to your county elections office. The drop boxes actually enable it to where it's a 24 access box that's usually under that is always under video surveillance and is usually located in government, near government buildings, and provide a level of accessibility that I know for myself personally I took advantage of. I used the Dropbox system during the primary, and I also used the Dropbox system during the runoff as well. And so I think that, and I think I also used to do it in general. Yes, I did. Okay, cool. So yeah, sorry you all. Like it's like all of the elections blur together because as I mentioned before, I think when I did a total count of it, some Georgians experienced voting about 6 to 7 times last year. So yeah, it was a lot of elections here for us. But I will say that like for me personally, I definitely experience like using the Dropbox. I know that if it's still an option later on, I probably will continue to use the Dropbox. Again, it does allow you that level of flexibility and knowing that you can, find a Dropbox location that's nearest you. I know during the general at first, my closest one was actually about 30 minutes away. And this time around, the other one was actually 10 minutes away. So I was really excited about that. So that's my own little personal thing about why I like Dropboxes. But also, too, the data doesn't lie is that, like, we get to this increased access to, increasing voter turnout because we do have access to Dropbox. So that is something else that's also been in conversation as well. And the last part that I'm aware of as well, and if folks are aware of other things that they may have heard as well, I would love for you to go ahead and drop that in the comments too, is that there have been conversations about more rigorous voter ID laws. I haven't heard necessarily the specifics on it. However, this is coming in light of what we have is called like the exact match law, which exact match here means that they're taking the signatures that you put like when you go to the DMV and you sign on your license with the signature thing. If that signature doesn't match the signature on your absentee ballot or on your voter registration, that they might think that it's suspicious or they may not, fully process it. There has been work around that. I will say exact match law was challenged in court in, I believe, 2018 during that gubernatorial election. But however, they are looking into options to make it more rigorous based off of what transpired last year with the general election. And so, really wanted to highlight those key things in terms of our quest for voter rights and making sure that we continue to protect the gains that we have, but also continue to move the needle forward in terms of ensuring that folks who can get registered are able to get registered, and for those who are able to vote, that they have what they need, the correct information that they need, and being able to explain the process to ensure that they feel confident about going to the polls and also voting up and down ballot. Um, and so I think I definitely wanted to uplift that as well. Yes, thank you, Lauren. I just remembered that. Yes, and they're also looking too into like so for folks who don't know, there was a number of organizations and groups who were actually sending out absentee ballot applications, and I think that was partly due to, if I'm remembering correctly, in the primary election, the Secretary of State here in Georgia actually authorized for absentee ballots to be sent out to every registered voter. So I remember getting mine. I remember a number of people got theirs as well, and that was the only election that it was sent out for. So a number of people were trying to help, mitigate that difference, because a lot of people, and I know we experienced this too when talking to folks, were actually expecting to get another absentee ballot through, provided to them by the Secretary of State's office. However, that wasn't the case. So a number of organizations did go ahead and actually, send out applications for people so they had that information. Um, I think too, as well, this started because by then we did not have an online portal to request your absentee ballots. That actually came a little bit later in the year. I don't remember the exact month or time it did, but that was also an issue. Also, as well, when you're requesting your absentee ballot online here in Georgia, you have to have your Georgia ID number in order to do so, which works well for folks who have a Georgia ID, but there are still folks who have a voter ID, which they've gotten from the county elections office, or have other forms of acceptable ID that don't fit into that bracket. So they would still need an absentee ballot application. And so I just wanted to note that too, but I appreciate you for lifting that up, Lauren. Because yeah, I definitely remember reading that, or maybe I heard it. Like, all my news is kind of blurring together right now. And so but yes, no, thank you so much for that. Because it's definitely something that I think, we have to continue to look at. And I know that's something that we're going to continue to look at too, is that, looking back at what has transpired over this year, is that definitely looking at these gains and continuing to fight to make sure that people have what they need to go vote, because that's how we could continue to increase voter turnout across the state, and especially for our communities. And so I think the next thing that we're looking at here is, and this is something as well that we have referenced a few times before during the course of this series, but it's definitely something that we're bringing into this year as well, is the human rights violations that have been occurring at Irwin Detention Center. For folks who may have forgotten, last year, a nurse, her name is Dawn, had actually blew the whistle on these human rights violations, where they were not taking the COVID-19 best practices in order to ensure the safety of those who were being detained by ICE. Also, there were forced hysterectomies that were performed on people who did not know or consent to these procedures, and knowing that that is a huge violation of our rights. And so we are committed to continuing to connect people to those who are in charge of not only the Irwin Detention Center, but also our state legislatures, to make sure that we stop what's going on there, but also ensuring that those things are not occurring elsewhere too. Because and I always make sure to lift this up too, is that what happened there is not necessarily like an isolated incident, but is in direct connection to how Black and brown bodies are often used in that way, especially those who have been detained or incarcerated by the system. It seems as if though, and I mean, I'm still fairly young, I'm 29, but I still remember every couple of years or so, there's always another article that talks about the forced hysterectomies and procedures that are being performed on Black and Brown bodies that are incarcerated and detained. And we have to do our part to ensure that we're advocating for their human rights to be protected, and knowing that we don't stand for infringements on people's rights, especially especially because this is the what am I trying to say? Especially because we want to make sure that we're holding our elected officials accountable to the things that are going on and making sure that we're creating a just world. And so I wanted to lift that up as well. So we'll be doing some work in making sure that we're connecting voters to what's going on, keeping updated with what's happening in the midst of that situation, and encouraging people to contact their legislators, whether it's through phone calls or emails, or just shouting them out on Facebook and Twitter, and really calling them to task to really take action, and ensuring that we don't allow this to continue onward. And so the next one is, and I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, is healthcare. Oh my gosh, healthcare, right? Um, I mentioned about how we haven't expanded Medicaid, but knowing too that, like, in the ways in which, especially this pandemic directly disproportionately impacts Black people and other people of color, is that we have to do more work to ensure that when our legislators are meeting this time around, that we continue to push the needle forward in terms of increasing access to healthcare services. I will say last year we were successful in advocating around the expansion of Medicaid coverage for those who are postpartum. Originally, before that bill had passed, Medicaid would only cover, I think it was 60 days of postpartum, and we were able to get that increase to 6 months. And it's also fully funded. And so, but however, the data still shows that for those who, for the statistics that we talk about around maternal mortality, that includes those who die up to 1 year post birth. And so, wanting to make sure that we continue to highlight this reality, and that we're doing a lot of work around ensuring that we're advocating around these issues and things that are needed most. And so I wanted to uplift that as well. And so if folks have any questions in terms of like the legislative process here in Georgia, or any of the other initiatives or fights that are happening, I definitely welcome you to drop them in the comments. The last one that I will mention too is just overall the budget. So every year, this is a conversation around the budget, and knowing too that we need to continue to remain vigilant to ensure that services such as around childcare, job protection, transportation, behavioral health, and other things that are really needed at this time are not being cut as well. So make sure that we're keeping a vigilant eye. Um, and there's a whole host of other things, but these are definitely like some of the priority areas that we see coming up in terms of the legislative process here in Georgia. So we want to make sure that we're doing what we can to advocate around those things. And so now I'm going to pivot to the a little bit around the national landscape, in a sense that going into 2021, now that we are closing the chapter on what I have been calling the epilogue of the 2020 elections, knowing that there still needs to be a conversation around a comprehensive COVID relief bill, and making sure that we are continuing to talk around that, and encouraging people to be in conversation with their congressional members, both in the state and the House of Representatives, around the things that matter most to you in that. And so I really highly encourage people, if you haven't already, to get to know who your elected officials are on every level, not even just the national one. So national, state, local, county, so we can start cultivating those relationships, because I think 2020 is definitely a testament to the fact that everything is interconnected. That this political landscape does not operate in silos. And so making sure that we are holding those who are elected accountable, especially to the things that are needed as well. And so the next thing I want to talk about are just some upcoming events that are coming from us here at Women Engaged. Um, the first thing is that every year, since our founding, we partner with the U.S. Department of Arts and Culture to host a People's State of the Union Story Circle. This is an event that we really focus on uplifting the stories and experiences that we have in our lives and using them as a catalyst for change and accountability in our communities. And so I'm super excited that we're going to be partnering again with National Domestic Workers We Dream in Black Atlanta chapter and 9 to 5 Working Women Georgia again this year to provide that experience as well. And so that information will be forthcoming. The next thing that we'll have is our legislative day. It's our joint reproductive justice advocacy day, where we work with a host of our partners all across the state who are deep supporters, deep organizers around the principles of reproductive justice. And it's a time for us to then look at the bills that are currently on the floor and currently work around either pushing progressive legislation or asking for us to take stances in the values and principles around that when it comes to other bills that are introduced. And so that usually takes place, I will say, towards the later part of February, sometimes mid-March. It does depend on the schedule from the legislative session. And that schedule is usually determined within the first week. So we should have more idea of when that date will come as we get closer and get through that experience. The next thing I want to lift up is the Tony K. Bambara Scholar Activism Conference, which is open to the public. And this is done in partnership with the Spelman Women's Research and Resource Center. Malika Redmond, again, our executive director, has been working with Spelman College and is also an alum of Spelman College. Shout out to Spelman College, okay? And creating this and being one of the co-conspirators around creating this conference as an opportunity to uplift the scholarship of Tony K. Bambara, but also talking about how we can then take the things that we are learning and bringing it into an activism space to really engage and ground ourselves as we continue to act forward. And so that will be happening, I believe, the third week of March. But again, all this information is forthcoming, but I just feel like it's a new year. We got to cover new information. Like, okay. And so I hope you all, again, if you haven't already, sign up to stay engaged with us. I think it was dropped earlier in the comments to www.womenengage.org/get_involved. This is a way to make sure that you stay connected with our communication as we continue to send emails out and other blasts with some of this important information as well. And so I think this is going to bring us, we're about 20 minutes before the hour. And of course, in typical fashion, I talk really fast. So I'm going through all the things that I have. But I just want to say, reflecting on this time, I mentioned at the top of the hour, but I want to mention it again. I deeply appreciate you all for always tuning in, for commenting, for liking, for sharing our content. It really does help us in getting the message out, reaching new folks. I will say, like, on average, we're able to grow our audience and to connect with so many more people just because of the love and support that you all show to us. I think the other part about this too is that, we've definitely tried some really innovative things, whether they were the watch parties for the debates or just the watch parties around documentaries. We also had our first gaming stream this past Monday. Wow, this has been I was just talking to my roommate about this the other day. I was like, wow, it's already been a long year and it's only been a week. I believe it's been a long year, but it's only been a week. But that we were able to do that. So we're now on Twitch as well. You guys can sign up for emails. We're definitely on Twitter and Instagram. But we're just coming up with different fun and unique ways. But we would love just to hear from you all about how you've enjoyed your time here. I will say that, like, for us, we hope that you all are taking the time to take care of yourselves, rejuvenate a bit. Again, it has definitely been a very long year, not only this year, but just 2020 in general. And that I know, right, Lauren? Thank you. Thank you. I know I had fun on the gaming stream too. If folks didn't get a chance to check it out, it's still up on our page. Um, I learned that I'm much better at being the imposter than I thought I was. But I can't. I can't even. Like, usually when I play by myself, like if I'm the imposter, I immediately leave the room. I'm like, oh, I'm not playing this round. So yeah, it was definitely a fun time. And so again, that's the things that we're really interested in doing. And so I don't want you all to think that this series is going to end though. We're definitely still going to keep this up. But we're going to take some time to, of course, rest. So we won't be meeting next week, but we're going to come back with some awesome things, talking about some great topics, having some more speakers. And really continue to talk now really about the issues and stuff. So we went hard on the voting, okay? And like we talk about all the time, women engage, we do this work year round in our communities to really build the relationships, also encouraging leadership development. So then that way the folks that we're talking to are is again, it's not a transactional manner, but that we're building people up to take on the leadership, to be involved in their communities, to cultivate these relationships with their elected officials, but also with just their neighbors. So then that way we can, build this power around the issues that matter most to us and really holding people accountable to addressing those issues. Um, in the same ways in which we continue to organize around the issues that matter most to us. And so, well, I'm super excited for us to come back with that, um, to have that moment to really do that. So again, if there are any topics or things that you all are interested in learning more about, we can have that here as well. And then, of course, too, in terms of voting, I will mention that too. I just thought about that this year for Georgia. So now that the major elections is out, there will be a special election in February. I do need to double check my information about what is on the ballot, but that is something that's coming up, as well as Atlanta and other cities in the state will be coming up on their municipal elections, which is their citywide elections. So that means that they will be having mayors and city council members running other city officials, and so we're definitely looking at that too, especially as we go into the fall of 2021. And then knowing that next year in 2022, we are up for another gubernatorial or statewide election that covers things like from governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, and so many other positions as well. So we're going to continue to, take the lessons learned from this year, or I keep saying this year like it's not already 2021. We're gonna keep taking the lessons learned, the community, the growth that we've had, and continue to build on that so we can continue this momentum. And so this has definitely been an amazing journey with you all in this, and I'm really excited for us to, as we, round out again this epilogue of the 2020 elections, that we continue to write this next chapter as something that continues to grow and expand the ways in which we really were getting involved. And so I really thank you all. And so I don't know if there folks out there have any other lingering questions or things that you just wanted to uplift, maybe your favorite memory from this time around hanging out with us, or maybe let's see here. Yeah, like I guess like or something that you like really want to see kept up going. I mean, we could keep, I know this is definitely something that we want to keep here. It's just a weekly check-in with folks. We're definitely rethinking through our Instagram live so we can have some more engaging content for folks to really get to, know the faces behind the movement, right? Know the people behind the movement and the amazing things that we have going on here. Okay, everyone. Well, I don't think there might be any questions in the comments. I know there's a little bit of a lag. I'm just trying to make sure I don't end the stream too early. And I'm also covering my notes to make sure that I covered everything that I wanted to touch on today before I ended this here. I don't think so. So again, thank you all for continuing to support us. Thank you all for oh, great. The comment just came through. Okay, cool. I enjoyed that conversation too, Laura. Thank you. Around the RJ and faith. And that's also something too that we've been doing work around for a few years as well as an organization. It's just really, again, talking about these motivations, which lead people to stuff and really continuing to bridge that and knowing, demystifying this process. I very much remember a couple years ago. I'm so excited to say that a couple years ago in 2019, in the aftermath of the abortion ban that was passed here, which of course, by the way, was defeated last year as well in 2020. We were actually contacted by a couple of churches that actually wanted us to come talk to their congregation about the impact of that bill and what it would mean for the criminalization of Black women, and really being able to engage in a dialogue, right, to reconcile a lot of the conversations that people have around like abortion and faith. And so it does really excite me that we are in a space where we can have these kind of conversations, really debunk some of these myths and really start talking about the impact of these things and knowing like what's all there. So I mean, it was a great conversation. I when I look back on it, I don't think it was taped or anything, but it was just a really moving experience there. And so I'm really excited to keep growing in that and growing our understanding with it. And so, you know, knowing that you can still be a person of faith, um, and, you know, definitely still also be a part of this movement. So that was with IV4RJ. Definitely check them out again. And also for folks who did get a chance to check it out, it's on our Facebook page and it will soon be up on our YouTube page where you can always check back to see current live streams of the show and other things that we're doing as well. And so, yeah, I don't know. That's what we have for you all today. Again, I know this year has definitely started off a little bit rocky, but we really hope that you all are doing the best to take care of yourselves, you know, checking in with yourselves. Feel free to unplug from the news, drink water, and, you know, really just be generous with yourself in that love and know that, like, you know, it's okay. We're all going to take this moment to breathe, to rest, but that we can continue to do this work to fight for the issues that matter most to us. And, you know, really just continue in this organizing effort to really build power in our communities. And so, again, I thank you all for tuning in with us, sharing the content. And so I'm looking forward to seeing you all again. I keep saying meeting you all. It's always nice to develop relations with people this way, but like, we'll see you all again, not next week, but the week after with some more exciting content, a whole new host of schedule, things that we'll be going through, and different actions to take. And so until next time, again, stay well. I hope everyone has a great weekend. Bye.